Hello, I am Izzy Almazan,
I'm Marissa Castaneda.
and today we're going to be discussing the movie Sweet Bean, which is truly a Sweet Bean movie. Like, cute. So the first question is discuss how your three descriptions of the sneak peek are different from or similar to each other. Select a scene that the group interpretations differ most greatly among those sneak peeks and explain how recognizing such differences benefits you to work in the globalized society. We're going to start here with scene one.
Right. Um, I saw the relationship as something formal, especially since he refers to her as ma'am. And they were speaking of how people were worshiping a shrine and they sanitized afterwards. And she just seemed worried and concerned. And the man just seemed like he was used to it. That's how I took it. Like, it just seemed very, like, he wasn't concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw it the same way, like a formal relationship. Definitely calling her a man and having the respect. For me, as far as the strangers, I thought they were also giving respect, or maybe it was like foreigners that were visiting the country. Um, and of course, the man just kind of not having a big deal about it because like maybe it happens all the time. Um, and I also kind of assumed too that maybe it was just like she was being a noisy neighbor, being like, "Hey, did you see this? I'm being the neighborhood watch." So.
Especially with all those little dogs. I assumed that she was just being nosy also.
Mm-hmm.
That whole stereotype with the nosy neighbor with all her little dogs.
That's me. but yeah, but yeah. I just really kind of saw like a neighbor talking to a neighbor and just being concerned about strange people being there, and then of course the whole thing about the concern and him just being like, it's no big deal. Like if it happens again, maybe. But um,
I told it.
so yeah, well, we had a lot of similarities there on scene one. As for scene two, um, so looking at this one, it was kind of an odd scene because you don't really get a lot of information. But I saw like a small community center for senior citizens, especially for how small it looked. The relationship I was looking at with the man and the girl was maybe it was just visitors going to see a grandmother or something like that, or just visiting to be friendly. And then, of course, when I was looking at it from my American perspective, I assumed maybe it was war veterans, especially if you look at one man who doesn't have a nose.
Yeah, I saw it the same way too, but I think this is the one scene we had the most differences on. I also saw it as a senior housing, but I just assumed they were there to volunteer since they were kind of carrying stuff. I was like, well, maybe they're taking stuff to like either like donate or like help with.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the old people outside, I just assumed that they were having some sort of like gathering, like or like some sort of event.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that could really be a big thing as talking about the scene two discussion. Um, just kind of saying that seeing it that way, um, I guess is just how I would see it in America from a viewpoint. Um, I had a grandfather that was in the military and he was missing a limb, so I guess that's how it changed my worldview at that moment in a globalized society. You know?
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. So, um, okay. Go on to scene three.
In this scene, I saw the relationship between the man and the old woman like as friendly because she calls him boss, and I assumed that they had like a business together, and it just but the Sentaro, I didn't know his name at the time, became just very emotional, and I assumed that she was sick due to her age, and she was reminiscing about the cherry blossoms. I assumed she had some kind of connection or with like some cherry blossom tree in the area.
Yeah. Um, like I said, we shared a similar brain cell on a lot of these scenes. Um,
Yes.
because like I too saw it as like a form of a work relationship since she referred to him as boss, and then of course seeing Centauro crying, basically knowing that she's close to death and her crying from an emotional moment because their bond obviously seemed really strong. And the cherry blossoms is such a momentous moment over in Japan because it's about change of a new season.
Yes.
So for her, it was kind of like a moment of being closer to death, is what it came across as to me. So
Yeah, same. I it was just very with the music. It was just all emotional. You knew that, like, it was they were talking about death, and it was just sad.
It was very sad. Like, too many tears. Shall we move on?
Yes.
Okay. So we kind of already discussed scene 2, so I'm not going to cover more into that unless you had more to say, Marissa.
No, I think we're good. We kind of already said that we had differences with it.
Okay. Then we shall move on to the next question, which is what is one life lesson that you and your group members learned from this module, and how can you and your group members use this life lesson in the future?
I personally took it as I just really like the way Toke viewed the world and how she listened to it, and just her situation and Sentaro's situation, especially how the shopkeeper was quick to judge. So something that I would take from this movie and the module was not to quickly judge people and their situations, and not to judge them for their mistakes because it doesn't define them.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, I think I'd have to agree with that. Life is really short, like you've mentioned, and I think that is something very important, especially from like Toke, who like lived most of her life sheltered. So for Sentaro, kind of, because in the beginning of the movie, you find out that Sentaro is just kind of like this guarded off man who goes and works at a dorayaki shop, but he doesn't really look at what's around him. And then when Toke enters his life, he notices how hospitable she is, or as one might say, because basically she has omoyari and a lot of omotenashi as well. Of course, like having hospitality towards the red beans when they cook, or listening to the wind telling her to reach out to Sentaro. I basically felt like that's something.
I agree because. Oh no, go ahead. Okay, yeah. So I was gonna say that I agree with you because Toke basically teaches him that to become more in tune with the world, and you see it as the movie goes on. He starts to see like the beauty of everything.
Yes, definitely.
He is in more tune with it.
Yeah. So that's something I definitely would say was an important life lesson too. That life's too short. That kind of take a moment to look at everything around you and not just let it pass you by. Okay. All right. Moving on. Okay.
As a group, find one new Japanese perspective demonstrated in this film, which was not introduced in the lecture video and the assigned ratings. Please describe the scene and perspective and explain why this is unique to the Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. So we obviously learned from this movie about the hospitality and empathy of people, and of course learning about Hansen's disease, which was a very strong and emotional thing to know about. But I think the new perspectives that I gained is learning that you don't have to follow the life path everybody else does. We kind of watched in that movie Departures about an EA family structure system of being a businessman and then of course a shopkeeper. And Sentaro is a shopkeeper, but like we didn't really get to learn about the Saiki family in that retrospect. So seeing Sentaro's day in and day out life and how Toke noticed that he was trapped inside a job that he felt like he was obligated to keep working, and learning that you don't have to follow that path, that you just sometimes kind of listen to what you want. So him breaking away from that dorayaki shop and opening up his own at a park where he felt happy. I think that's something that's incredibly important because a lot in Japanese pop culture that I've seen and movies, it's always shown that you strictly have to follow something like to be successful at it, you know?
Oh yeah, I've seen that as well, and I just really like that Sentaro was able to break away from that mold.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just see like at the last scene where you see his face, like he's content with his decisions and with his life. Um, being able to have his own dorayaki shop, like he's finally like basically fell in love with that type of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with you.
Absolutely. Okay. Moving on to the next one. As a group, select one character you and your group members can least empathize with and summarize you and your group members' negative feelings with this character, then try to find a positive side to this character as well. Ooh.
Well, we chose the shopkeeper.
Bum, bum, bum.
We just least empathized with her because of her views of Toke and not being open minded. However, I kind of took this as it was more of a generational mindset because she mentions that she saw a shrine get sanitized after the people left. So I'm assuming that she was probably alive during either when the medicine was introduced in the 50s,
mm-hmm.
or when the leprosy prevention law was repealed in 1996. So I'm assuming she has some sort of generational mindset to this type of stigma
Mm-hmm.
to people who had Hansen's disease.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and with that stigma, of course, she's concerned about her shop and wanting to make sure she keeps business with that because Hansen's disease is still a major stigma even today. But I think that's probably the one positive thing I could see out of that character is she was concerned for her shop and for people who would probably come across Toke, even though it came off really, really harsh.
Yeah, like she just came off like she came like very like I guess like harshly in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah. Because Toke is the one that brought her success to the shop.
Mm-hmm.
It was her recipe and it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was frustrated about that. So there's so many things that could be more said, but we're just gonna leave it at that. So
yes.
Moving on to the final question.
If you were Toke, how do you think your life would be different? I feel like I would just be more in tune with the world, like the way she views it. And I love the way she just viewed it and how she spoke of it, how like the beans whispered to her or like she listened to the wind. And I really enjoyed that, like the way she viewed life.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I just think that it's something I would think how my life would be different.
There's two different ways I view this question. Because, of course, being Toke, she didn't get the ability to do what most girls her age would have done back during the that time era. Because, like she said, she wanted to teach Japanese for a living when she was younger, and just thinking about the hardships of living in a sanatorium where you're kind of blocked away from the rest of society seems really hard. I mean, she did have a friend, and then she also had a husband, and for me, I think I would struggle with it. But the thing that's such a wonderful thing about Toke is she saw the beauty in all things, and she never let that weigh her down. So in a way, I think my life would be different not having the opportunities like most people would. But I do agree with you. I would try to look at things the same way she did and listen to nature and allow that to not bring me down from things. And try to bring on, and even when you have a stigma against you, try to see the beauty in other people and kind of take the time to listen to them.
Yes, I agree because she did have a lot of hardships and she didn't let it weigh her down at all.
Absolutely.
It was just nice to see her like I don't know how she enjoyed life.
Yeah. And kind of for her, I guess in a way, like we would call it like a catch 22, what kind of goes around comes around. Like she allowed something that could have been like really bad karma, where she could have taken it out on other people, and instead she went and saw Sentaro because she saw that he was sad and lonely, and she helped him. But because she helped him, he also kind of helped her in return to enjoy her last bit of living, you know?
Yes, and that's just what makes the whole movie emotional because they do help each other like see the beauty in the world
Mm-hmm.
and everything about it. It wasn't just about the doriyaki shop; it was about them.
Yeah, and that's what made it so sweet. So, um, but yeah, overall, this was a really good movie. Um, I would definitely
Yes.
rate this movie a 9.5 out of 10. Um, the point five is just because the shopkeeper really upset me and frustrated me, as well as her nephew.
Oh, okay. We didn't get into the nephew. I just wanted to mention something about the nephew. When he was, I know chewing gum when you're introducing or like being presented to someone, it's very disrespectful regardless of the culture, and it made me mad.
No, I
and it
understand.
and I specifically looked it up if it was considered rude in Japanese culture, and it is. And I was just like, I didn't like it.
Oh, I didn't like him either. And then the way the shopkeeper was like, yeah, he lost his other job because he was too controlling. It's like, well, how do you think your shop's gonna be any better if he takes over? So
Yes, like there's just so much there, and like it just seemed like she was just flaunting the fact that she had gained success from Tokue, and it, like you made Sentaro fire her, and it made me mad.
but the thing is, like, he never really fired her. Um, not as far as like I saw in
yeah,
the
she
movie.
yeah
Yeah.
she left. I think that's how they say it.
Yeah, she ended up quitting because her body couldn't handle it anymore. So,
Mhm.
but yeah,
Yeah.
um, it definitely was a step up from Departures, but I did not need so many tears to be shed in this movie.
Yes, it was a great movie, but it was emotional.
Oh, absolutely. I don't need any more tears in this class, Fukuda Sensei. No more. No more. So,
But yeah,
yeah. But as for that, thank you for coming to the group discussion again.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.